What's up, members of the Peter Griffin household? It's your host, the most troublesome Junction, back at it again with another Hornby, Clockwork, Thomas and Friends review. Now, I might as well just rebrand my channel to just reviewing these guys because I have made it very apparent that this is one of my favorite Thomas and Friends lines. So this is another character here. We do have Bill. It's the single card package, which I did briefly mention these guys in the Percy video, that these guys were typically harder to find. You had all of these guys released in single card variants, but you don't really see them too often. You do see Ben pop up in the one set that comes with both Thomas and Ben. But as for Toby, yeah, good luck on that one. But funny enough, I was able to secure getting a Toby and this troublesome truck right here, along with Bill. So videos on all of those will be coming soon. So I feel like wanting to do, once again, a discussion on these guys because there really isn't any proper reviews on any of this stuff. The only videos that I know of that really talk about these guys are outside of the Thomas and Percy that run on traditional Hornby track. I've seen one video that detailed the Thomas and Ben set that came out, and then one of them, which was by YouTube user Damien Lemaitre, talking about these guys new in package. Been a very big fan of his channel for a very long time now. He's one of the big reasons I got into model trains. So looking at the package here, it's really nothing on the back here. These retail back in the day for $8.99, of course in British pounds. Man, imagine if they still made these to this day. They would make a killing for that price. I absolutely adore this line because it takes the detail of the Hornby Thomas and Friends line and puts them as a toy. So rather than having a model that, you know, you're typically not supposed to play with unless it's on model train track, it takes all the detail, the things you love about the model, and puts it in a fucking toy. That is absolutely everything I want in a toy. Not to mention, I am very biased towards Hornby because I love not only their Thomas and Friends line, but I also like that they're much more durable than their Bachmann counterparts. I mean, objectively, Bachmann looks better, but I much prefer Hornby for a multitude of reasons, but that being one of them. Package here has all the characters above. I believe some packages have it on the back with each character you can get. It is relatively limited in what you could get because they used a very special type of coupling system, but we'll get more into that later. Now, this one in particular, I was able to snag this for around $30, along with Toby, same price, and then $20 for this truck right here. Now, you're probably wondering to yourself, well, Duck, you're not going to unbox a rare Thomas and Friends item just for the sake of a video. Yes. So I know there are a lot of people that are probably upset that I took this out of package, but I don't care. So one of the more recurring themes on my channel is the fact that I'm very big on toy preservation and documentation. And I know there are people out there that have these guys, but I think putting a video out there that has a thorough documentation on these guys, that's something that's very big and important to me. But I also did want to utilize this build because it is such a nice looking model. Now, from first impressions, it does basically look like an identical sculpt to the Bill/Ben mold that they use on the normal Hornby Bill and Ben. But I think it might be slightly scaled down because the wheels that they use here don't line up to what a traditional Hornby 040 chassis would be. So it looks like there's been a bit of retooling happening, but for the most part, if you were to set this side by side to the Hornby Bill or Ben, it basically looks identical. And that's, again, one of the things I absolutely love about this line is the fact that they take the things we love about the Hornby Thomas items and just make them as toys. And it's little to no detail lost. One of the comparisons I do want to make, though, is that this seems to have a matte finish paint job, which is very reminiscent of the actual Bill and Ben Hornby model, whereas the Thomas and the Percy, well, these ones are the ones that are compatible with the HO scale track, but I think it still carries over to the flat-wheeled versions as well. But these ones just seem to be molded in the, very shiny plastic, where this seems to be hit with some sort of matte finish. So really nice, and matte finish just makes any type of model look so much more finished and professional. I can actually pull out over here another Hornby 040. This is one that I painted in a matte finish black, gave a custom Dock Railway logo, and it just looks, you know, a million times better than what it started out as. But going over the details, so of course this is Bill's, so if you do have Ben, it's basically an identical one, but the nameplate is swapped, even much so the face. Looking at the face here, it is a phenomenal face sculpt compared to what is shown on screen in Thomas & Friends. It looks like this eye is slightly notched up, so it does have a little bit of a derpy look. But, you know, if you were to squint and just look at it, you know, from any other angle, it really doesn't look that bad. But it is a phenomenal looking face, maybe a little bit small, but, you know, again, I think it is a very solid representation of the China Clay twins. Got the Brendan Bay printing right there in the nice light yellow. It even has a molded handrail detail, which is really nice. You know, they painted it and everything. That is something that is, you know, unlike the Thomas and Percy. Granted, they don't have very much, you know, detail in terms of like hand railing or anything of that sort. But it's nice that they painted things such as, you know, like lining on the sandboxes. And then this little nugget right here. I'm not entirely, I think this might be part of the sandbox, but you know, for the fact that that's painted in compared to something like Percy where all of it is just that solid molded green. So it definitely is, I would say, a very noticeable step up in quality compared to the older offerings of Thomas and Percy. Unfortunately, it does not have a whistle, but I mean, I can understand that because if it were on there, there is a high chance that it would snap off. Plus, neither the Thomas and Percy have their whistles. On the back here, there is no hollow window, and I believe that these are supposed to be painted, but it is not on this one. But I can understand not having a window here, because if you look into it, I mean, if you see through there, it's just mechanism. It would have been kind of cool to see, but, you know, again, you could do with it or do without, in my opinion. The buffers are just traditional Hornby, you know, buffers down there. It even has the painted chain link right there, as you can see. That is really nice because, you know, not even on Thomas and Percy, that is a little detail that's not painted. You know, it just really feels like a nice step up in quality with these guys. And I really can't wait to review Toby because I think that there's a lot about him too that, you know, yeah, there are some things that are different from him versus the normal Hornby model, but from just looking at it, it is a very solid looking model. But the next point that I want to mention is, you know, when I did my Hornby, Percy, and even Thomas review, I was in proximity to my model train layout. And there's a reason why I am not there here, and it is because, as you can see by these wheels, they are flat. They do not run on traditional HOOO scale track, much like the Thomas and the Percy do that I have already reviewed. These were made for their own special type of track. It is a very, very unusual type of track, and in all honesty, from a marketing standpoint, I don't entirely get why you would go out of your way to make an all plastic track. You could have, in all honesty, kept the Hornby, you know, traditional flanged wheels and then made the normal Hornby track, molded that in plastic, and you would have saved a lot of money. But I digress there. It definitely is, you know, unusual looking track. It's just bright red, but something about it is oddly charming. I can't deny that. It has like such a simplistic, what I would say, just child, you know, toy box kind of feel, you know? So that is the reason why I am not reviewing this up on my layout. It'd be kind of pointless because it can't run on traditional tracks. And for this video, as most of you know, I actually own some of the other colorful Hornby track that came with the Thomas and Bertie set that I reviewed when I took a look at the Clockwork / battery powered Thomas here. Strangely enough, when I go in the basement to look for the track, because I had it put up in storage, it magically disappeared. Years and years of looking at it and knowing where it was, and it just disappeared off the face of the earth. Hopefully I'm able to, you know, look again and find it for the next videos on Hornby, Toby, and the Troublesome Truck. But before this video continues, I do want to give a shout out to Stamps Play Rail Store, the sponsor of this channel. When you're shopping for older Thomas items such as Tomy or Trackmaster, you can run into the issue of buying things that are either faulty, not up to good quality, and just all in all dirty. When you order from Stamp Playero Store, you're guaranteed to get an engine that's been thoroughly cleaned, but also thoroughly serviced by people who know what they're doing. They cover international shipping, so no matter where you live, United States, UK, or even over in Asia, they ship out from Asia, so it'll take probably around 2 weeks to get to your place. The trains are very well packaged, so when you order it, you don't have to worry about you order something and it arriving broken. And they also have quality customer service, so if there's ever a problem, don't hesitate to reach out to them. And if you use my affiliate code as shown on the screen here, you're able to get 10% off your first order. This is not only a good way to help my channel, but also get yourself a good discount on some sweet Thomas & Friends merch. That's all I gotta say for this video. Thank you, Stamp Playero Store, for sponsoring the channel, and back to the review. But further looking at the mechanism, it does look like it is very similar to the original design, but definitely tweaked to specially fit these engines. And I think that that is such a nice touch because, again, they could have done sort of what they did with this Percy and then the other 040 Thomas. Just take the original Hornby Clockwork motor, color the wheels, and slap the Thomas body shell on it. It does work in some cases like Percy here, but when you got cases like the 040 Thomas, it definitely doesn't look as appealing. So it is definitely pretty nice in this line that you do have that attention to detail to make them look more screen accurate. Again, I think it is a missed opportunity for them to not have traditional, 0000 wheels. I see what they're going for. This is supposed to be like a Hornby Jr. type of line, an introductory into model trains for young children, but, just a couple things here and there that just definitely raises an eyebrow. Speaking of something else that is different between this versus traditional Hornby Thomas & Friends stuff as mentioned earlier is this coupling system. It basically seems kind of like the best comparison would be some of those generic toy train track systems. This is like very similar to how they interlock. Kind of reminds me of Trackmaster 2, where you have one of them is a slot that's meant to receive, one of them is the peg that's meant to connect on sort of deal. Kind of reminds me of something like that, but I feel like they did this special type of coupling rather than the traditional Hornby hook and loop coupling, because this is meant to be, a kid's toy train set. And when you connect them together, you want them to be sturdy enough so if a kid is able to run them on the layout, they're not going to come uncoupled, or with the case of hook and loop couplings, they would have a tendency to potentially break. So doing something like this does make sense from that perspective, but it also is very limiting for this item. Because again, not only, you don't have the traditional model railway wheels to make it compatible with traditional track, you also don't have a traditional coupling. So as I was hinting at earlier, these characters on the package, this is all you can do for this line. You could get Thomas, Percy, Annie, Clarabelle, the twins, Toby, and some freight cars, but there's so many other things. Like, you can't use this with, there's no tender engine offering, so if you ever wanted to have like an Edward, a James, or a Gordon, you would either have to custom make them or use some sort of alternative of an existing, Thomas thing as a substitute. But even with like rolling stock, for the fact that, yeah, we get 2 troublesome trucks, it's nice that we have them, but there's so much missed opportunity for things they could have done and added to this line. But unfortunately, we will never see that because it seems like this whole concept for Hornby is just out of the window, with them not only losing the Thomas & Friends license, but seeing them also move more towards battery-powered trains rather than Clockwork. It is an unfortunate change, but it is very nice that we did get what we got for the time. It feels like there could be some kind of middle ground to have a nice sturdy coupling system that is also compatible with traditional Hornby stuff. So, there are positives and there are negatives to this line. The positives are they look great, they're fun to mess around with, and they're just a neat novelty all in all. But the negatives are, if you already have a well-established model railway, such as myself, like, the Thomas and the Percy here, you could get away with putting these on a layout, running them on a layout, using them on a layout, but you can't really do the same with these guys. You might be able to get away with sitting them on a siding or something like that, or just, sort of putting them off to the side, or maybe, you could probably go in here and replace the wheels with these ones. I don't know how well that'll work out, but I think it definitely would be possible, seeing as you line them up here, they do look relatively close in size, but I'm not going to be the one to try that out. So on to how it works. So as the same demonstration as my Hornby Clockwork Percy, you put it in here, you insert the key to where the hole is, you give it a couple twists, And once it's all wound up, you take the key out, and this little lever right here determines if it's stopped or if it's going. So if it's pushed forward, it's in stop, but if you pull it backwards, that's when it starts to go. It moves at a very nice pace. It's not too fast, not too slow. Sit it on the ground here. Look at that. It looks like, you know, just a normal, in all honesty, a normal Hornby engine that you would see realistically going on a layout. It is really nice to see that. And another thing I really do like is I like how this handle is not only very discreet, like it's literally that little nub, that's it. But I like that it's hanging out more, because one of the biggest problems I had with this Percy here is this lever is bent up. So whenever you're having it run, you either have to take the roof off to flick it forward or stop it, or you would have to try and fit your fingers in here or use some kind of small little screwdriver or something. It is definitely kind of hard to get, you know, a grip on it to stop it or have it going. Whereas this, it's exposed on the side, but it's also not in the same case of like the roof here on the original Hornby 040s. So it's a really, really nice mechanism. I love how they handled that here. I wish that could have carried over to the Percy, and I don't really have a traditional Thomas to compare it to, but I think it does have a similar mechanism to how Percy's is. So after looking around through my collection trying to find the original Hornby track, I actually realized, wow, I have all this Ertl track just sitting around. I could just use this to run Bill on. It's not 100% identical because that track does have grooves in it, probably to keep them from wiggling around like the Ertl track does, but it should work regardless, and I think this will be a fun way to showcase how it runs and all of the different factors of that. So I have Bill all wound up over here, so we're gonna send him off, and there he goes. So I guess if you are in the market for some track that is compatible with this stuff, that's relatively, you know, I think most Thomas and Friends fans have some kind of access to Ertl track or Take Along or even Adventures track. All of those track alternatives where it's literally just wannabe road, I think they'll work just fine for these guys. So that is a fun alternative, and it's really nice to see that not only can I get some more use out of this beloved Ertl track, but also showcase what this guy is capable of. Now on to some size comparisons here. I know that I had some, you know, pulled these guys out earlier, but here he is compared to the Thomas and the Percy. Now, one thing I will not deny, he's fucking massive. Like, look at this, is a chonker right here. And this is a big problem people had with also the normal Hornby Bill and Ben. That thing was just huge. I personally think it's a great sculpt. I love the neutral sort of face that it has. I love the matte finish. I love the detail. But that is one thing I can't deny. The size of it is absolutely atrocious. And that is why most people opt into buying the Bachmann Bill and Ben. But I don't blame them for making that choice. You know, when you have these engines, I mean, size comparison doesn't necessarily matter to everyone, but it is a very big deal to a lot of serious modelers out there. Even when comparing him to, you know, lengthwise, he is longer than Thomas, but just barely shorter than Percy, if you see here. Actually, if you line him up buffer to buffer, he's the same length as Percy. So yeah, that is definitely another thing where if you do want this guy, you know, I mean, granted, I think if you're buying these guys, you're probably not too concerned with hyper realism, because at that point, just buy the damn Bachmann one and shut up. But again, I think that is something important to note because it is a problem that people had with the normal Bill and Ben release, so I think it'd be pretty silly to not mention that here. Here is he compared to the original Hornby 040 Clockwork engine. You know, I mean, in this case, you know, he is somewhat relevant to Thomas, well, more or less Tugs, but it is a custom. It is a very simple custom, but I still think it looks nice. But now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, I can kind of, you know, get behind the fact that it is a little bit bigger, because it does seem to me that they used the original mechanism just slightly altered, and maybe with the mechanism of this Hornby Clockwork engine, they really couldn't do anything too original with these guys, because I mean, if you're selling these things for what, £9, like, Of course, you're not going to go through and give, you know, model train treatment where you're going to give it original sculpts, original chassis, and all that sort of deal, even though Hornby definitely didn't really do that with a lot of their Thomas engines. So maybe it was an issue with trying to fit all of the mechanisms inside of here that really became an issue. So I can definitely understand that, especially once again, it is a toy, but I do think that the size, it could be better, but you know, again, I'm not going to sit here and open this up and try to give a diagnosis of, oh, could they have compacted the mechanism down some more or not. You know, it is what it is, bottom line. As for the final comparison, I want to compare it to one of my favorite Hornby items. It is the Hornby HST, the Intercity 125 here. My goodness, seeing how tall he is. You know, Ben should Bill/Ben, they should probably be like maybe up to here or something like that. They should not be this damn big. It is so comical seeing this guy compared to a lot of other Hornby engines. You know, I know there's the same issue with Toby. A lot of people hate the Hornby Toby because of how big he is, but I understand it, you know, because they reused the an existing chassis for it. But I won't let Hornby off the hook with that one, because if you're making an engine that is meant to be for model railway, you should have given it an original chassis. I think it would have made a lot of fans happier, and, you know, it is just lazy all in all to really do that. But my goodness, this is a funny comparison here. Look at me, Ben! I'm fucking massive! But that concludes the comparison section here. There is something else that I do want to tackle, and it is track compatibility. So, as I said before, you can't run this on traditional Hornby track. So, we're going to see, you know, some popular track brands and see if it's compatible. Going to line up the wheels here, and does not look like it's able to ride the rails. If you actually look at it down this way, you can see it is just barely, you know, able to, and it is because, yeah, it is very close to HO/OO scale, because OO/HO scale engines can actually ride the inner rails of Tomy and Trackmaster tracks. So, you know, it does make sense there, but it is very unfortunate that you can't use it with Tomy track. You know, I was going to do a comparison with some Flexi track here, but since it can't even ride the Tomy rails, there's no way it's going to fit on this. But for a comparison that I think no one probably was expecting, we're going to try it on some Power City train track. You know, this track is something that a lot of people in my age demographic probably remember back in the day. I will never let it down that I was the one that suggested Leo Kim Video use this track for Thomas Minis. So it looks here, it is actually very, very close, it seems. If you see right there, it's like it wants to, but it is just barely. You see it shifting a little bit. Fuck. Look, Ben, I'm able to do tricks. Look at that. Look, Ben, I'm doing fucking tricks. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of track systems this is comparable to. I wish I did have that colorful Hornby track, because I think that would be able, if it's able to accommodate for this Thomas, I'm confident it's able to accommodate for the other, you know, flat-wheeled versions of the Thomas and Friends characters. What it was trying to do, and for the line it was made for, and all of that, I think it is a solid item. I'd honestly give it an 8.5 out of 10. It's a phenomenal representation of Bill/Ben. I would love to see Hornby give these lines another shot, but I don't think that'll ever happen. But if I were to give this a general rating for just any old Thomas and Friends fan, I'd honestly would be more hesitant. I'd probably give it maybe a 6. And the reason I say that is because it's oddly specific for what you can use it for. You know, as I said before, when you have this line right here, you might not be a fan of it all aesthetically, but at least it runs on OO scale track. So if you wanted some kind of Thomas and Friends representation on your line, I highly recommend picking these up. They look great. They're phenomenal. Just sit in a siding somewhere, or even just have them running with a small, you know, load and stuff like that. Well, these guys, you can't even do that unless you were to modify them. I think this line is phenomenal, but again, you just can't do anything with it outside of running it on a very specific track, having it compatible with a small amount and very specific rolling stock, So if I were to give recommendations for this, if you're a big fan of the Hornby Clockwork line, much like myself, and you want to either do some fun photography, or you just, you're a diehard Thomas & Friends fan, I think that these are awesome pieces that really do stand out on a Thomas & Friends collection. But I definitely think if you're a casual fan, you might want to skip out on these because there really isn't a lot you could do unless you maybe have, some take-along track or the Superstation track and such, or just larger Thomas & Friends type track. You really can't do too much with this, and it is very unfortunate. If you're able to find these guys for cheap, though, I definitely do recommend you pick them up, but I would say for the average fan, you probably don't want to go out of your way for this. So, that's all I got to say for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the flip side.
Spenton ass! Spenton ass! Yes! Spenton, yes! Spenton, yes!